I used to think I knew my wife. That's the thought that haunts me now, sitting in the darkness of our living room at 3 a.m., staring at the family portrait above the fireplace. Emily's smile in that photo, radiant, genuine, the same smile that convinced me 15 years ago that she was everything I'd ever wanted. The reliable provider and the devoted homemaker. God, we were such a cliché, and I was perfectly fine with that. Our house sits on Maple Street, the kind of suburban paradise I'd worked 60-hour weeks to afford. 3 bedrooms, 2-car garage, the lawn I mowed religiously every Saturday while Emily tended her garden. We had routines that felt unshakable. Sunday dinners with her parents, Thursday movie nights, morning coffee together before I left for the accounting firm. I thought those routines meant something. I thought they were the threads that wove a marriage together. The changes started small, so small I almost admired them at first. Emily suddenly had friends I'd never met. Women, from a book club that materialized out of nowhere, yoga instructors whose classes seemed to run unusually late. "You should join us sometime," she'd say about the book club, knowing full well I'd rather have a root canal than discuss contemporary women's fiction. "The instructor keeps us after for meditation," she'd explain when yoga ran until 10 p.m., her tone matter-of-fact. "It's really centering." I told myself this was healthy. After 15 years, wasn't some independence good? Didn't all the marriage experts say couples needed their own interests? I even felt proud. My wife was evolving, growing, not just the woman who packed my lunches and remembered my mother's birthday. But then came the lies. Small ones, barely lies at all, really. She'd mentioned shopping at Nordstrom, but her credit card statement, which I only saw because I handled our finances, showed charges from a boutique across town. She'd say she was with her friend Sarah, and then Sarah would call the house asking for Emily. Oh, we must have just missed each other. Emily would laugh it off, her voice light and dismissive. You know how chaotic the mall gets? Each lie was a grain of sand, insignificant alone, but accumulating into something I couldn't ignore. I started noticing things that had probably been there all along. The way she'd angle her phone screen away when texting. The new perfume. Something French and expensive that she'd never worn for me. The unexplained miles on her car's odometer. 40 miles to visit her sister who lived 15 minutes away. Traffic was horrible, she'd say with practiced ease. Had to take the long way. Last Tuesday, I was looking for aspirin in her purse, a sinus headache that had plagued me all day, when my fingers found the receipt. The Meridian Hotel Bar. 2 drinks, timestamp 8:47 p.m., the exact time she'd claimed to be at her book club discussing whatever Oprah had recommended that month. The Meridian wasn't some casual spot. It was downtown, valet parking, the kind of place executives took clients to close deals. The kind of place married women didn't go alone. "What's this?" I asked, holding up the receipt, trying to keep my voice neutral. Emily glanced at it with practiced calm. "Oh, that. Poor Jessica is going through such an ugly divorce," she replied smoothly. She needed somewhere private to talk, away from all the gossip. You know how people are. Her explanation came too quickly, too smooth, like she'd rehearsed it in her head. Jessica, a name I'd heard maybe twice in 15 years. The words hung between us, and I wanted so desperately to believe them. This was Emily, my Emily, the woman who cried at our wedding vows, who held my hand through my father's funeral, who still left me silly notes in my lunch bag. "Of course," I said, folding the receipt and handing it back. "Tell Jessica I hope things get better." Emily smiled, that same radiant smile from our portrait, and kissed my cheek. "You're such a good man, Mark," she murmured against my skin. Jessica's lucky I have such an understanding husband to bore with my stories. That night, as Emily's breathing deepened into sleep beside me, I stared at the ceiling. The bedroom we'd painted together. The bed we'd bought to replace the hand-me-down from my parents. The woman I'd promised to trust and honor. Every shadow seemed to mock me. Every creak of the house sounded like secrets being whispered. Something had cracked in my chest when I'd held that receipt. Not broken, not shattered, just cracked, like the foundation of a house settling in ways it shouldn't. I thought about the unexplained miles, the new perfume, the phone calls taken in hushed tones behind closed doors. I thought about Jessica, who may or may not exist, who may or may not be getting divorced. I turned to look at Emily, peaceful in sleep, her face unguarded and innocent. How many lies lived behind that beautiful face? How many times had I kissed lips that had just finished? Speaking deceptions? "If you're lying to me, Emily," I whispered into the darkness, so quiet even I could barely hear it. "I'll know." The words felt like a promise, or maybe a threat. Either way, I meant them. The transformation happened gradually, then all at once. I became someone I didn't recognize, a man who checked odometer readings before Emily left and after she returned, who created spreadsheets tracking discrepancies between claimed destinations and actual mileage. 23 miles to her mother's house when it should be 12. 47 miles for a trip to the grocery store. Each number was another entry in my mental database of deception. 3 weeks after finding the hotel receipt, I'd mapped Emily's lies. Tuesday, book clubs that required full makeup and her best perfume. Thursday, yoga classes that left her hair mysteriously unstyled, not pulled back in the ponytail she always wore to actual workouts. Saturday, lunches with college friends that somehow never resulted in leftovers brought home or stories about what they'd discussed. Emily, drunk on her own deception, grew bolder. The weekly girls' nights became her new religion, defended with the fervor of a zealot. "You go golfing with your buddies," she'd point out when I mentioned the frequency, her tone defensive. "I deserve time with my friends too." She was right, of course, except my golf buddies existed. They had names, faces, wives who knew my wife. We had scorecards and bar tabs and photos of terrible swings posted to Facebook. Her transformation was remarkable. The woman who'd worn the same yoga pants for weekend errands now owned lingerie from boutiques I'd never heard of, discovered only because she'd forgotten to hide the credit card statement. Matching sets in deep purple black lace that cost more than our monthly water bill. I never saw her wear them. She started taking phone calls in the garage, her voice carrying through the thin walls in fragments. "I can't wait to see you again. Mark won't be home until late. Next week we'll have more time." Each overheard. Word was another twist of the knife. But I remained silent, cataloging everything like evidence for a trial that existed only in my mind. The Thursday that changed everything started like any other. Emily announced she was having dinner with her sister Rachel. "We haven't caught up in ages," she said, applying lipstick in the hallway mirror, a deep red I'd never seen before. "You know how she gets when I don't make time for her." "Give her my best," I replied, not looking up from my laptop. 20 minutes after she left, I was in my car, following at a safe distance. The private investigator shows on TV make it look easy, but tailing your own wife through suburban streets requires a particular kind of careful distance, far enough to avoid detection, close enough not to lose her at traffic lights. She didn't drive toward Rachel's house. Instead, she headed downtown, toward the luxury apartments that had sprouted up near the financial district. Glass towers full of young professionals and successful divorces. My hands gripped the steering wheel as she pulled into the underground, parking of the Columbia residences. I parked across the street, my heart hammering as I watched her enter through the main lobby. She knew exactly where she was going, no hesitation, no checking directories. This wasn't her first visit. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I watched her enter the elevator. The digital display above tracked her ascent. 3, 7, 11, 14, 19. 19th floor. For 2 hours, I sat in that car. 2 hours of imagining what was happening 19 floors above me. 2 hours of fighting the urge to storm into that building, to take the elevator up, to pound on every door until I found her. When she finally emerged, everything about her screamed of intimacy. Her hair, carefully styled before she'd left, now fell in disheveled waves. The red lipstick was completely gone. Her blouse was buttoned wrong, the third button in the fourth hole, a detail only a husband would notice. She practically glowed with satisfaction. Then he appeared behind her. Ethan Cole, I'd learn his name later, was everything I feared I wasn't. Tall where I was average, athletic where I'd grown soft, wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. He had the easy confidence of a man who'd never worried about mortgage payments or college funds. His hand rested possessively on Emily's lower back as he walked her to her car. They kissed goodbye. Not a friendly peck, but a deep, lingering kiss that made my vision blur with rage. The kind of kiss Emily and I hadn't shared in years. When they finally separated, she laughed, a bright, girlish sound I hadn't heard since our dating days. Something cold crystallized in my chest as I watched Ethan Cole return to his building, watched Emily drive away humming to herself. The hurt transformed into something harder, more useful. She'd been playing a long game, probably for months. The yoga classes, the book clubs, the sister dinners, an elaborate architecture of deception that must have required considerable planning. Fine. I could play games too. When Emily returned home, I was in my office, apparently deep in quarterly. Reports! How was Rachel? I asked without looking up. Oh, you know Rachel, Emily said, her lie as smooth as silk. Still complaining about Tom, still drinking too much wine. I'm exhausted. You should shower and get to bed, I suggested. You look tired. She kissed the top of my head, the same lips that had been on Ethan Cole an hour ago, and headed upstairs. The shower ran for longer than usual, washing away evidence, I supposed. That night, I created a new email account from an incognito browser. Window. Mark documentation@protonmail.com. Anonymous, encrypted, untraceable. I began organizing everything. Photos from my phone of her car at the Columbia residences, screenshots of credit card charges, a detailed timeline of every single lie she'd told. Over the following weeks, I became a ghost in my own marriage. I stopped asking questions, stopped showing any suspicion. When Emily announced another girls' night or sister dinner, I simply nodded and wished her fun. My apparent obliviousness emboldened her further. She started leaving her phone face up, no longer bothering to delete texts. She'd spray perfume before leaving, but not upon returning, as if I was too stupid to notice she came back smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. You seem more relaxed lately, Emily mentioned one morning over breakfast. Less stressed about work. I've decided to stop worrying about things I can't control, I replied, spreading butter on my toast. Life's too short. She smiled and squeezed my hand. I'm glad, she said warmly. You deserve to be happy, Mark. The irony of her words would have been funny if it hadn't been so cruel. That evening, alone in my office, I opened the evidence folder. On my encrypted email, 63 pieces of documentation so far, photos, receipts, timeline entries, even a recording of one of her garage phone calls captured by the nanny cam I'd installed for security purposes. Game on, Emily, I whispered to the screen, adding the latest credit card statement showing a $300 charge at a lingerie store. Let's see who's better at this. By week 10 of my investigation, I had become a master of the game. Emily thought she was playing alone. The GPS tracker, no bigger than a matchbox, fit perfectly under her car's rear bumper. Military grade, accurate to within 3 feet, battery life of 2 months. The investment of $400 seemed trivial compared to the clarity it provided. Tuesday book clubs were actually apartment 1902 at the Columbia residences. Thursday yoga sessions, translated to the Ritz-Carlton downtown. Those sister dinners? The Golden Palm restaurant, with its intimate lighting and $200 prix-fixe menus. The hidden camera in our bedroom, disguised as a phone charger, captured what I hadn't anticipated. Not affairs, but rehearsals. Emily would practice her lies in front of our mirror, perfecting her delivery. Book club ran late because we got into such a deep discussion about the themes, she'd say to her reflection, adjusting her expression until it radiated sincerity. Margaret actually started crying when we talked about the mother-daughter relationship. Watching her rehearse deception with such dedication was almost impressive. The woman I'd married had become a method actor, and our marriage was her stage. The private investigator cost $3,000 for 2 weeks of work, but Thomas Brennan was worth every penny. Ex-cop, discreet, thorough. His reports read like evidence files, time-stamped photos, credit reports, background checks. Ethan Cole materialized from anonymity into crystal clarity. 43 years old, divorced 2 years ago, real estate developer, net worth approximately $8.4 million. His ex-wife had caught him with his secretary. The irony wasn't lost on me. Brennan's surveillance photos were damning. Emily and Ethan at Le Bernardin, her hand on his across the table. The two of them entering the Mandarin Oriental at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday when she'd claimed to be shopping for my birthday present. Most devastating. A photo of them in Ethan's Mercedes, Emily's head tilted back in obvious ecstasy, his hand where it shouldn't be, parked in a secluded spot at Riverside Park. "Your wife is maintaining an active affair," Brennan stated with clinical detachment when we met at a diner outside town. "Based on behavioral patterns and frequency of meetings, I'd estimate this has been ongoing for approximately 4 months. 4 months. 120 days of deception, give or take." Emily, drunk on her success, had become sloppy. She'd announce overnight trips to visit her sick aunt in Connecticut, an aunt who'd been dead for 3 years, though Emily seemed to have forgotten I'd attended the funeral with her. The GPS tracker showed her at luxury hotels. The Four Seasons in Boston, the St. Regis in Manhattan. Hotel reservations under Ethan Cole's name, the receipts helpfully forwarded by Brennan's contact in Cole's office. My internal battle between rage and patience became a daily war. Some nights, I'd stand outside our bedroom door at 3 a.m., fighting the urge to wake her up and confront her with printed photos spread across our bed like tarot cards predicting divorce. I imagined her face crumbling, the practiced lies dying. On her lips as evidence made deception impossible, but haste would be my enemy. Emily had constructed her false reality carefully. She'd fight to maintain it. She'd claim Ethan was just a friend, that the photos were misunderstandings, that I was paranoid and controlling. She'd cry. She'd apologize for the appearance of impropriety. She'd promise to cut contact. Then she'd be more careful, more clever, and I'd never get the satisfaction of complete victory. No, I needed something inescapable, something that would shatter her lies so completely that even she couldn't deny the truth. Thursday afternoon, Emily made my decision for me. "I'm going to spend tomorrow night at Rachel's," she announced, not looking up from her phone. "Sister, bonding time. You know how it is." The casualness of her lie, delivered while probably texting Ethan, sealed my decision. Tomorrow night would be the reckoning. "That sounds nice," I replied, my voice perfectly neutral. "Tell Rachel I said hello." "I will," Emily smiled, still texting. "You'll be okay on your own? There's leftover lasagna in the fridge. I'll manage," I assured her. That evening, I prepared methodically. I organized every piece of evidence chronologically, printed photos in clear sleeves, credit card statements highlighted, GPS tracking logs showing every lie, Brennan's full report bound like a legal brief. I even created a PowerPoint presentation, the accountant in me requiring visual aids for the destruction of my marriage. The plan was surgical. Follow Emily to her real destination tomorrow night using the GPS tracker. Document her arrival at Ethan's apartment or whichever hotel they'd chosen. Wait 90 minutes, enough time for them to be thoroughly compromised. Then confront them both with the evidence, ensuring Ethan's involvement was exposed, making it impossible for Emily to claim innocence or salvage her reputation. I practiced my speech in the mirror, much like Emily practiced her lies. "Hello, Emily. Hello, Ethan. Before you embarrass yourselves with denials, you should know I have documented evidence of your affair spanning 4 months, including photographs, hotel receipts, and GPS tracking. Data. Emily, your attorney will receive copies Monday morning. Ethan, your business partners might find the photos particularly interesting, especially the ones taken during what you claimed were client meetings." Cold, clinical, devastating. I packed a bag with the evidence, my phone fully charged for recording. The confrontation, even a change of clothes in case things got messy. Everything was ready for tomorrow night's grand finale. That night, Emily curled against me in bed, playing the role of loving wife with Oscar-worthy commitment. "I love you, Mark," she murmured sleepily. "You know that, right?" "I know exactly." "What you are, Emily?" I whispered back. But she was already asleep. Tomorrow night, the curtain would finally fall on her performance. Every lie she'd told, every deception she'd crafted, every moment she'd looked me in the eye and betrayed our vows. It would all come crashing down in a spectacular finale of her own making. I stared at the ceiling, counting down the hours until Friday evening. In my mind, I could already see her face when presented with the evidence. The panic, the desperate scrambling for explanations, the moment she'd realize her game was over. "Tomorrow, Emily," I said to the darkness, "you'll finally pay for every lie you've told." Friday dragged like a funeral procession. I sat through meetings at the accounting firm, my mind elsewhere, the evidence bag locked in my car's trunk like a loaded weapon. Emily texted twice, casual domestic messages about dinner plans for next week, a reminder about her mother's birthday. The mundane cruelty of her maintaining such normal pretenses while planning another night of betrayal made my jaw ache from clenching. At 6 p.m., Emily kissed my cheek goodbye, her overnight bag slung over her shoulder. "Have fun with Rachel," I said, the words ash in my mouth. "Don't wait up," she replied with a smile that would have fooled anyone who hadn't spent over 2 months documenting her deception. "Sister time might run late." I waited 15 minutes before following, tracking her phone's GPS signal on my tablet. She drove directly to the Columbia residences, not even pretending to head toward Rachel's first. The arrogance of it almost made me laugh. I parked in my usual spot across the street, settling in for the 90-minute wait I'd planned. At 11:47 p.m., my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something in my gut made me answer. "Mr. Mark Dawson?" The voice was professional, carefully modulated, the tone people use to deliver bad news. "Yes?" I responded. "This is Officer Patricia Walsh with Metro Police," the voice continued. "Sir, your wife has been in a serious car accident." The world tilted. My carefully constructed plan evaporated like smoke. For a moment, I was just a husband hearing those terrifying words, 15 years of marriage overriding 2 months of betrayal. "Is she... how bad?" I stammered. "She's been transported to St. Mary's Hospital," the officer replied. "Sir, she's stable but injured. Are you able to come to the hospital?" "Yes, of course. I'm on my way," I managed. I was halfway to my car when Officer Walsh added, "Mr. Dawson, you should know your wife wasn't alone in the vehicle. The passenger, a Mr. Ethan Cole, was also injured and transported to the same facility." The world tilted again, but in a different direction. "I see," I managed. "Thank you for letting me know." The drive to St. Mary's was surreal. My grand plan for confrontation had become unnecessary. The universe, it seemed, had its own sense of dramatic timing. The emergency room was controlled chaos, but a nurse directed me to room 314. I pushed through the door to find Emily propped up in a hospital bed, her face a geography of bruises, her left arm in a cast, her eyes wide with a terror that had nothing to do with physical pain. She saw me and began crying, not the pretty tears she deployed during arguments, but raw, ugly sobs of someone whose world was collapsing. "Mark! Oh God, Mark, I can explain," she began through her tears. "Where did the accident happen, Emily?" I asked, my voice calm, almost conversational. It was, she stammered. "Officer Walsh said Riverside Drive. That's 15 miles from Rachel's house," I interrupted. I pulled a chair next to her bed, sat down with deliberate calm. "Interesting route to your sister's place." "Please, Mark, you don't understand," she pleaded. "And Ethan Cole," I said, letting the name hang in the antiseptic air. "Your passenger. How unfortunate that he was also injured. Is he a new friend from book club?" Emily's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. Even through the injuries, I could see her mind racing, searching for any lie that might work, any explanation that could salvage this moment. Ethan is just... We were... She faltered. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone, already queued to the gallery I'd prepared. "Before you embarrass yourself further, you should see something," I said calmly. I swiped through the photos slowly, letting each one register. Emily and Ethan at dinner, Emily entering his apartment. The two of them kissing in his Mercedes. Her face crumbled with each image, the last pretense of innocence dissolving. "Over 2 months of documentation," I said quietly. "GPS tracking, credit card records, hotel receipts, even a few recordings of your phone calls from the garage. You really should check for security cameras, Emily. That private investigator was worth every penny." "Mark, please, it didn't mean anything," she began desperately. "The affair?" I leaned back in the chair, studying her with the detachment I usually reserved for spreadsheets. "The affair I could have eventually forgiven, Emily. People make mistakes, succumb to temptation, but 4 months of looking me in the eye and lying, that's unforgivable." "It wasn't that long. The affair only started," she protested. "Every moment after it started was a lie," I cut her off. "Every kiss goodbye, every I love you, every normal dinner where you sat across from me planning your next rendezvous. You turned our entire marriage into a performance." The door opened and a nurse peered in. "Mr. Cole is asking for someone. He's conscious but disoriented," the nurse informed us. "He keeps saying Emily's name." Emily's face went white beneath the bruises. "Mark, please," she whispered. "Room 316, the nurse continued, unaware of the drama she'd stumbled into. "If you want to check on your friend." After the nurse left, I stood up. "Your parents are on their way," I announced. "I called them from the parking lot, told them about the accident." I paused at the door. "I also forwarded them the evidence file. They'll have questions, I'm sure." "Mark, you didn't... They can't..." Emily gasped. "Your sister Rachel's coming too," I continued. "She was very confused when I called, since you were supposedly at her house." I pulled out a manila envelope, thick with documents, and placed it on her bedside table. "Divorce papers. I had them drawn up last week, just waiting for the right moment. Seems like fate provided one." Emily struggled to sit up straighter, wincing at the pain. "You can't do this," she said weakly. "Not now. Not when I'm injured, vulnerable, in pain." I met her eyes steadily. "Imagine how I felt every night you came home smelling like another man's cologne." Before she could respond, voices filled the hallway. Emily's parents, her sister, all talking rapidly, concerned. I watched Emily's face as she realized what was about to happen. Her family would arrive expecting to comfort their injured daughter, only to discover the woman they'd loved was a stranger who'd betrayed everyone who trusted her. "Mark," Emily's voice was barely a whisper, "don't leave me alone for this." I looked at my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, one last time. Took in the injuries that would heal, the fear that wouldn't, the consequences she'd earned with every calculated lie. "You were never alone, Emily," I replied. "You had Ethan Cole. I'm sure he'll be a great comfort once he's conscious." I opened the door as her family rushed in, their faces shifting from concern to confusion as they saw Emily's tears weren't just from physical pain. "Mark!" Emily's mother rushed to me. "Thank God you're here. What happened? The police said..." I handed her a copy of the evidence folder. "Everything you need to know is in there," I told her. "Emily can fill in any gaps." I looked back at Emily one final time. I'm sure she has quite a story prepared. I walked out as Emily's father opened the folder, as her sister gasped at the first photo, as Emily began sobbing out explanations that fell on increasingly hostile ears. Down the hallway, past room 316, where Ethan Cole lay dealing with his own injuries and soon his own consequences, out into the cold night air that felt like freedom. As I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot, I realized the cosmic joke of it all. I'd planned every detail of tonight's confrontation, choreographed each moment of revelation. But fate had provided something better. Emily exposed, not by my design, but by her own recklessness. Her lies shattered not in private shame, but in a public hospital where she couldn't run, couldn't hide, couldn't do anything but face the truth. Phone buzzed. Rachel's text was short. "Is this real? Did she really?" I typed back. Every word, every photo, every lie. 3 dots appeared as she typed, then stopped, then typed again. Finally, "I'm sorry, Mark. You deserved better." I started. The engine pulled out of the parking lot and drove home to the house that would soon be mine alone. Behind me, in that hospital room, Emily was learning what I'd discovered over 2 months ago, that when you build a life on lies, eventually, inevitably, the truth arrives to collect its due. 6 months later, I stood in what used to be our bedroom, now simply my bedroom, packing Emily's mother's china into boxes marked for donation. The divorce had been finalized 2 weeks ago, uncontested, swift, surgical. Emily's documented infidelity had eliminated any hope of alimony, and Massachusetts law had been clear about the division of assets in cases of proven adultery. The house was mine, the retirement accounts untouched, the savings protected. Even, Emily's lawyer had advised her to take the settlement I offered rather than risk a trial with such overwhelming evidence. The doorbell interrupted my packing. Thomas Brennan stood on my porch, looking older than during our investigation. Thought. "You might want to know," he said without preamble. "Ethan Cole declared bankruptcy last month." I raised an eyebrow, inviting him to continue. "Turns out his real estate empire was more leveraged than anyone knew," he explained. "When word got out about the affair, those photos you shared with his business partners, his investors pulled out. Credibility's everything in his business." Brennan shrugged. "He's moving to Seattle, starting over." "And Emily?" I asked. "Living with her parents," he replied. "Working part-time at a dental office. She filed a restraining order against Cole. 3 months ago, apparently he wasn't interested in supporting her once she became a liability. I wasn't surprised. Men like Ethan Cole collected beautiful women like vintage wines to be enjoyed and discarded when they lost their appeal. Emily had been a diversion, a toy. The moment she came with complications, he'd moved on to the next conquest. "Thanks for letting me know," I told Brennan. After he left, I continued packing, each wrapped plate a small meditation on the strange turns life takes. The house felt different now, lighter, honest, mine in a way it never was when filled with Emily's deceptions. I'd repainted the bedroom, bought new furniture, eliminated every trace of her except for these last few boxes. My phone buzzed. A text from my brother. "Still on for dinner Saturday? Janet's making her famous lasagna." "Wouldn't miss it," I replied. Life had resumed its rhythm, different but not destroyed. I'd joined a hiking club, started taking cooking classes, even had a standing Thursday poker game with guys from work. The crushing weight I'd carried for months, first of suspicion, then of knowledge, finally of planning revenge, had lifted. I felt like a man who'd survived cancer. Grateful, cautious, but ultimately renewed. The last box sealed, I carried them to the garage for tomorrow's charity pickup. Among them was our wedding album, which I'd debated keeping. In the end, those people in the photos, the trusting groom, the radiant bride, were strangers to me now. They belonged to someone else's story. That evening, I sat on the porch with a beer, watching suburbia go about its evening routines. The Johnsons walking their dog, the Martinez kids playing basketball, the eternal rhythm of normal life. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Mark?" The voice was barely recognizable. Emily sounded older, tired, diminished. "What do you want, Emily?" I asked. I wanted you to know I'm getting help," she said hesitantly. "Therapy. Trying to understand why I did what I did." I said nothing, letting silence fill the space between us. "I know you'll never forgive me," she continued, her voice breaking. "I don't forgive myself." but I wanted you to know that I realize now what I threw away. You were everything good in my life, and I destroyed it for nothing. Not for nothing, I corrected. For Ethan Cole, for excitement, for the thrill of deception. Yes, she admitted, her voice barely audible. All of that. Mark, Emily, I interrupted, not unkindly but firmly. I hope you find whatever peace you're looking for, but you won't find it with me. Goodbye. I hung up before she could respond, then blocked the number. That chapter was closed, the book shelved. Looking back, I sometimes wondered if I could have handled things differently. Confronted her earlier, tried counseling, fought for the marriage. But sitting on that porch, in the house I'd worked so hard to build, surrounded by the life I'd rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal, I knew the truth. I didn't destroy Emily's life. She did that herself. One lie at a time, one deception building on another until the weight of them crushed everything we'd built together. The accident, the exposure, the divorce. They weren't revenge, they were consequences, as inevitable as gravity. The last lesson Emily taught me, though she never intended to, was perhaps the most valuable. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. Don't wait for 63 pieces of evidence. Don't need a private investigator's confirmation. Don't require fate's intervention. But sometimes, when the universe aligns just right, fate delivers its own perfect justice. And sometimes, that's exactly what everyone deserves. I raised my beer to the setting sun, to new beginnings, to the price of deception paid in full. I didn't destroy Emily's life, I said to the empty porch, the words carrying a satisfaction that would never quite fade. She did that herself. I just refused to help her rebuild it on more lies. The sun set over Maple Street, and somewhere across town, Emily was learning what I'd discovered over 2 months ago, that the truth, patient, and inexorable always collects its due. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.